Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Wolfram Language Design Review, part of our language completeness and consistency series. And our first topic today is a chestnut that has been roasting for at least 30 years. Let's see what we can do here. So just as a precursor to this, the new treatment of things like E and so on, we've already discussed, and that's underway. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah.
Yes, we discussed it uh, underway as in the queue, underway not as in anything has actually happened yet.
Okay. But we think we have a solution which we can start implementing.
At least for most of them, yes. I think I
Okay.
think K still needs thought, but
Which one?
K, but
K.
yes.
It's nice that these letters become our personal friends. Okay. All right. The next topic here is the thing people want is being able to have essentially a symbol called xmin. At least that's the way I see it. And by the time you say, well, I don't really want it to be a symbol, I want to be able to say x sub 3 and I want to be able to extract the 3 and all this kind of thing, then we've lost the game. This is really a, you know, we're taking a thing, it's a big blob of stuff, but we're just putting that name in the symbol table.
Right.
Do people agree with that analysis of what we're talking about here?
Yes, and that is what my proposal addresses.
Okay.
Um,
So you're proposing that we basically have symbolize and unsymbolize.
yep.
Now, what would happen? Okay, so I see it being useful both to have a string. I mean, I'm not quite sure why we couldn't have symbol of a string that is a subscript, right?
Well, I addressed that. That because we're not just creating a symbol, we're creating a symbol and format values. So this is not symbol. And I don't think we want to create symbol table entries that literally have linear syntax in them.
What do we want to have in there instead?
We have some sort of sanitized name, such as is what is shown there.
What about a UUID? I mean, what about no name that's reasonable at all? And just the name
I
just
mean,
has to look up the name somewhere else. I don't know. We haven't touched the symbol table in forever. So, Tom, maybe you can comment on this.
well, it can't.
Well, symbol table has been updated, to be more modern and everything some years ago. But I
I love
think
the way you say some years ago when it's going to turn out to be 30.
no, not 30. I mean
No,
like
it was touched when we did dynamics at the
well that
very
was
least.
That's 25 years ago, John.
It's not 30, and it's not no, and it's not
And
25. It's
it's
20.
20.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
also,
all right.
and technically it was touched like 3 or 4 years ago when we did context aliases.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Good point.
Okay, all right, fine. But why are we so afraid of having funky stuff in the symbol in the names of the symbol table?
Because
right.
there's a whole bunch of assumptions and code everywhere that this is a valid symbol name.
I
There's
see.
there's nothing wrong with having funky stuff in the symbol table. That's not the problem. The problem is how do you create these? What's their full form? If you paste them into
Wait a
another
minute. I was
system,
saying there was a
what
problem in
happens?
having funky stuff in the symbol table. So what's true?
There is problems, right? I mean, right? People use symbol or symbol queue to what is it or
We don't
right
have
to test if things are um if they're valid symbol names, right? Like information definition, right? There's all sorts of assumptions there about, that it's what's documented to be a valid symbol name.
The front end embeds assumptions in the box language about what is symbolish.
But when it comes to rendering, it's not going to have a problem. If it turns out that there's a symbol name and it's an image or something, the front end can deal with that or not.
Well, it depends. I mean, the front end can represent it, yes, but remember, the front end does its own very kinds of analysis on the boxes. That's how syntax highlighting works.
Okay, but for example,
and Itai, in fact, in this very notebook, came up with an issue where that block down below has weirdly inconsistent syntax highlighting for exactly this reason, because we assumed that a symbol is always a thing that looks like a symbol and never a subscript.
Right. And when you click into it, it'll magically vanish. So
okay, guys, look. Point number one, there's going to be some work here. This is not going to be a free ride. We know we're going to have a tale of issues. Point two, what I think we really want here is, I mean, just like you can have a glyph that is a different size and shape, and the front end deals with glyph metrics and so on, right? I see this as being
right. But the question is, how do you type it in?
okay. I understand that question.
My solution solves this problem, right?
What is your solution?
Well, it's right there. You evaluate the code and then you call symbolize, and now you have this thing which is a symbol, right? That is real code that you can evaluate. If you evaluated the code section,
Yeah.
and then you evaluate the symbolize,
Okay.
now that thing is a symbol.
What did it return?
It didn't return anything. It created the necessary infrastructure. So evaluate the next input.
But what is the next
Type it in.
input?
Type in X subscript Y.
Yeah. Type in X subscript Y
Yeah.
and just
Make it a block.
/ full
Yeah.
form and evaluate it, and you'll get that thing. And now that's a real symbol whose name is X under bracket Y. And we can pick whatever name we want for within the constraints of what's a valid symbol name, we can pick whatever name you want. And it formats as a subscript when you type in that
I understand. Every time I type X sub Y, now in this session, it'll do this funky transformation.
Yep.
That's crazy. Sorry.
Why is that crazy? And how is that different from any other proposal you're going to make?
Well, so I have I hadn't really seen this proposal in full, and I have a question about it. So what happens when you save this as a package? So the front end has it can't save it could save a linear form subscript box. I don't think we generally do right now. We save something. What we save is subscript, the full form subscript bracket X comma Y close bracket when this shows up in a package. So is subscript bracket X comma Y, if that shows up in a package, is that going to map to the symbolized thing if you run symbolize, or is that going to be considered fundamentally different?
If you type in the full form, I guess that'll probably be different. In fact, right. Well, right. We can do the test right now, right? So,
Yes.
right. If you type in subscript, right, assign a variable to assign a value to X sub Y, and then evaluate subscript of X comma Y, and we'll see what happens.
Okay, hold on. I've got a suggestion, guys, which follows what you're doing here, Itai. Okay, what if we just said all we're dealing with is subscripts here? Okay, that's because this is the thing people want all the frigging time. X sub min, blah, 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 blah. Right? What if we just said we're just doing subscripts? And all we did was we conceptually we assign a Unicode character that means what follows as a subscript. And then the symbol name is just the full form of the symbol name is just, X, backslash bracket subscript Y. And then everything just goes through with that. In other words, so we're
So it's a letter. This subscripted thing is a letter, Stephen.
yes, everything here, this thing, the only thing that's special is the front end knows to display that as a subscript. And other than that, if you say what are the characters in this symbol name, you get,
Three.
you get 3 characters.
That's really a question. That's really a question for John. I mean, from a kernel perspective, this is really easy. We just need to create a Unicode for something called subscript. And then, I mean, of course, this means you couldn't type this, right? You'd have to know to type this using escape subscript escape or something
Well,
rather than.
Yeah, look, the control underscore thing, we could do all kinds of things with that. We could do with autocompletes and with changing bindings and so on. Let's address that in a second. Okay.
Yeah. So if you had multiple subscript characters, that would be nested subscripts then?
Well, I would assume that what we would do is it would be, there's the pre-subscript and there's the post-subscript. So if I said X subscript, if I say, XXX subscript YYY, it would just be there's the pre-subscript thing that's on the line, then there's the thing that says go down to the subscript area and then enter the subscripts.
Right.
I mean, again,
John's question is what happens when you do add a subscript ZZZ after the YYY?
maybe you can't. I mean, maybe you just can't because that's the thing people want. We've gone.
I mean, to be clear, I'm not throwing that out as a aha, we can't do this. I'm asking as a clarification because
I don't think we care. I mean, I think it's easy enough if we really want to. Go ahead, John. You were going to say
because my expectation would be that it would be displayed as XXX sub YYY, and then the YYY has its own sub ZZZ.
Yeah, that's what I would
basically
assume.
A nested subscript.
That's what I would assume.
Yeah.
And my point here is, which we should have thought of years ago. I mean, this is the thing people always want is X sub min, right? If they wanted to put a picture of a dancing elephant in there, that's a different issue. Right, then they can use then it's an expression. But this is kind of.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
This isn't a crazy idea, but can you write in blood that you're not going to want the subscript read or a superscript or a overscript or an underscript?
Look, we've gone 39 years.
Yeah, no, I'm
without
just saying
having subscripted variables.
This solves many problems. Yeah, absolutely. You see, the problem here, the good thing about this is the state of the subscripted symbol is stored in the expression. So which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so let's just analyze. I mean, clearly our linear syntax is, I mean,
it's very good for certain things. But it also introduces many complications. Whether it was a good idea or not, I'll let for somebody like Tom to opine.
No, well, I think you're being diplomatic, Itai.
Ahoy is asking on our live stream, will subscriptive variables work in equations passed in nonlinear fit? Well, that would be the whole idea. It's just a symbol.
Absolutely.
But you wouldn't be able to, I mean, if you wanted to have, X sub 1, X sub 2, X sub 3 programmatically generated, you would have to do that. We could have a function
through some crazy like 2 expression thing or something like that.
Well, why not just do this? I mean, why not just allow this to be supported? Just allow that to turn it into a symbol.
Yeah, why not?
Well, because if X has a value, that'll be 3 sub 7, and I don't think we want to change symbol.
No, then it'll give an error. then it gives
Then it'll
an
give an
error.
error, just as if you type symbol of 3 now.
Right.
Okay.
There can be syntax errors from this. I think, yeah,
Yeah.
I imagine.
Right. So, I mean, yes, of course, so you can have a symbol like 3 subscript y, which isn't going to work. Right.
And the XXX and the YYY, they have to follow the normal rules of symbols.
Well, that
So
prefix one does, yes.
the
I mean, that
prefix.
one,
The
Well,
X,
yes, they have to follow the normal rules of symbols. So
yeah,
they
so
can't
they
have
can't have spaces
well,
or
actually, hold on.
Well,
Hold on. Let's think about that for a second.
So, I mean, the YYY isn't following the normal rules of symbols in the sense that, you know, the Y is not treated as the first character of a symbol.
yeah, exactly. It's treated
Right.
as a subsequent character of a
But
symbol.
they're going to want things like X, people are going to want X sub plus,
Right. Okay.
which I don't think is a huge problem. I mean, you know, this thing is going to be entered. The question of how it's entered, which we have to address.
yeah, that is a problem.
Speak for yourself about whether that's a huge problem.
That is a that is a big
Itai and I
problem.
are going to be in full agreement. That's a huge problem.
Yeah,
Why?
I agree as well.
Why? Why?
No, plus.
Why? No,
Because everywhere a plus is stuck next to something, it gets retokenized into an operator. Because otherwise, you would always have every paste operation would give you malformed code. Every, you know, you do not realize how much you depend
let
on
me
the
ask
fact.
the following
Did we have a
question.
letter plus?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. In Unicode, I'm pretty sure there are some small plus signs and things.
So
Right.
that
If there's a letter like Unicode Plus, then absolutely that could be
Right. So I mean, people are going to want. Okay. So now, what are the things people want? So the other thing people are going to want is, you know, star, like X star and things.
right.
So we could imagine. What's that?
Letter like star.
right.
Well,
So
yes, but I mean, this could be literally I mean, okay, so this thing here, well, I'm just worried that people will want things like X sub 7 plus and so on. I mean,
That would be okay. If there was a letter like plus, that's easy.
yeah, but then it will be subscript and then letter like plus.
7. There'd be a 7 and then letter like plus.
Yeah, right.
There'd be a 7 there.
and
Yeah.
and is the plus on the 7 or on the X? In which case
On
we
the 7.
for script character.
No. And then if we had a letter like plus, you could actually have a variable called X plus then.
Correct.
Yes.
It's just a thing to make letter symbols with. It's just a
Yes,
letter.
right. But I think there might even be a thing already in Unicode that is that.
Well,
So
maybe.
far, I haven't found one, but obviously we can invent one.
Yes. And then, I mean, because what we're doing already with X, you know, if I do X, you know, over bar, you know, and then I have an underscore, that's very treated in a very special way.
Yeah.
So in other words, we've already used for years, we've done special things with individual characters typed after you type control, you know, up arrow and things like that.
In a typeset, yeah, in typeset boxes. But that's
All right.
not
How would you feel
not the same
about
as symbols.
I'm sorry, I missed the calendar appointment. I'm here now, by the way, just in case I was missed.
Oh,
By the way, Stephen, try /:2795, I think it is. Yes, /:2795. And if you put an A in front of that, yeah, so that's a letter like plus that exists in Unicode. It's technically the heavy plus sign, but
okay. So what about overbars? Again, something people might want. How undoable, John? Is that a renderable thing or is that not? Is that hopelessly difficult?
Well, overbar, I think we can just do. I mean, if we have the superscript character, and I think, or no, I guess it's overscript and a normal underscore.
Yeah, but I mean the question. Yes,
Yeah,
right. I mean,
but I mean, you're asking if we have a a custom Unicode character which basically says, render as an overbar or maybe some other overscript thing. But then also, treat as a symbol. In principle, yes. I mean, there will be some, I'll just point out that there are some visual breakdowns that can happen in the same way that, like, what happens if you smash four subscript characters together? What does that even mean? The front end might
Sure.
not have a well-formed way to render that. And in the same way, the front end might not have a well-formed way to render, overbar characters, multiple overbar characters randomly sprinkled through a symbol name.
But hold on. We are absolutely limited to make a bunch of these things into syntax errors.
Well, I'm not even suggesting they need to be syntax errors. I'm just suggesting that the front end might choose to have a fallback rendering,
Yeah,
which is
fine.
not beautiful.
Yeah, which might be the full form of absolutely a fallback of a fallback.
Yeah.
Is there any way to have two indices that doesn't look like a 23 for a matrix entry?
Well, what about having a comma? I mean, if we could put a comma in there, it'd be fine.
Well, I mean, once again, comma brings up the issue of, a proper comma is an operator.
No, it can't be a proper comma. What we would have to do is this. If you go into the subscript position, when this is set up to be a symbolized thing, then whatever you type is letterized. See what I'm saying?
And how do you designate it as it's a symbol?
Jump to a completely different solution.
What's that?
Jason, I'll catch you up to speed on
Okay, thanks.
on that later. Yeah.
I feel like you've just jumped to a completely different solution, because now you're talking about typing this in from scratch. And I think, typing things in from scratch has well-defined meaning and has had for 30 plus years. And we can't change.
No, I know. So what I'm saying is, when you type this, right, you should get an autocomplete that says, do you want the symbolized version of this?
Autocomplete's different from auto conversion.
Yes,
right.
I'm saying.
I don't, right. We can't just auto letterize every single thing that a user might throw in there.
Fine.
Now,
some things won't work.
If there needs to be a small number of things, like maybe plus signs and maybe commas, right? We'll need right, just like we have \:, which is different from colon. I guess we could have a \/ comma that's different from an actual comma.
Yeah, I mean, I think that. Yeah, I'm just thinking about how one types this, and it may require kind of a specialized creating a specialized interface for typing it in, especially if you're going to have weirdo operators that aren't operator characters.
Okay, let's talk about typing it in for a second, okay?
Right, but yes, well, right, and I guess the question is the autocomplete. Once you've evaluated this once, then it could, may suggest you could just autocomplete this, but otherwise it's not very typable.
Okay, hold on. Let's not declare defeat on that yet. Okay, let's say, I mean, I really like our mechanisms with control, control underscore and so on, right? Okay, we're now in this state. What are we about to do here? So in other words, right now we're about to enter something which will turn into subscript of X, comma, whatever. Okay.
Or something that has a syntax error. It's entirely possible too.
Sure, but what we really need to do is change this into a state where now when what you type is going to be symbolized, so to speak.
And this is related to another problem that we haven't brought up yet, which is I think it would be really good for these symbolized things to be clearly visually distinct from non-symbolized things.
Yeah, I agree. But I think the way to do that is when you mouse near them, they have a dotted line around them.
I think it needs to be. I'm not saying I'm opposed to that, but I don't think that's enough. I think you need to be able to spot it when you're reading code without using pointing devices.
Right. And also let me point out, you may not be entering a subscript just because you're in subscript position, just as when you're in superscript position, you may not be entering a superscript, right? If you put a star there, what you've just entered is substar of X, not subscript of anything. Just like with a superscript.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
It could be power or superstar or
well, I mean, also there's
thing.
there's this syntax, for example.
Right.
Yeah, and there's also a very weird part syntax that can be done in the subscript. I don't think anybody uses it, but it's there.
I've used it on occasion.
Also, I've used it to look beautiful in some code. Okay, so, but let's just review. And Jason, who shouldn't have been late but was.
Sorry, the one thing I wanted to ask about this just before we review is I wanted to comment and say we could have the make expression rule actually do a lot of this. So in other words, we just have a sort of some template box, which is a symbolized sort of thing.
This was my starting point, and Stephen rejected it.
So what we're talking about, Jason, is basically having kind of certain letter-like Unicode characters that would cause the visual typesetting to change, but would, because they're letter-like, would actually be considered, just one part of a symbol.
So but why don't we want to actually do the implementation of this in the interface layer, which is exactly the make expression layer? And so in other words, we don't have to change the actual front-end coding of there's a huge amount. And so when we actually make that,
because the kernel will get totally scrambled up.
But the make expression rule actually tells what the kernel, what it sees, right?
I mean, but we also need to deal with packages. We need to deal with, a package should reasonably be able to represent this.
No, but the question is, what does the kernel see? Right?
The kernel sees the result of the make expression.
Yeah, but
fine, but the make expression is state that's stored other than in the expression, which is problematic.
Right. Yes, John pointed this out, which I didn't appreciate. That like package files then wouldn't.
Yeah, but it's not. It's like any
package files would be dependent on kernel state, which is not a good place to be.
Right.
True, but if we don't make, I mean, that's the whole point. That our whole interface of all our typesetting goes through make expression and make boxes. I mean,
Jason, there's a fundamental problem. Okay, if you have a symbol whose name is X sub Y,
yep,
for the purpose of the kernel, how does that symbol work? What is that symbol? What is its name?
It's going to be something like you've written there. With you're going to have some. We're going to have to invent in the kernel some sort of Unicode system like this thing, which is /subscript or something.
So then I don't understand why we're not just doing that directly. Why isn't the whole thing based on that?
Because the front end would then have to implement a second system of typesetting, a little bit like we have to do for, like linear syntax or something. It would be a whole mess. And so the way we can do this cleanly in the front end by just having some sort of wrapper in the front end, which says make all these things symbols, and then the interface layer does that. But you're right. That
okay, fine. That's an implementation feature. Okay, there's nothing inconsistent with that.
Cool.
The fact that where this translation happens, but there's no sort of assigning syntax. I got to tell you guys, you've heard this story 20 times at least, but in case anybody here has not heard the story of SMP's brilliant syntax modification system, you've all heard the story. Have you heard the story?
I have not heard the story, or I can't remember. Sorry.
Okay, so SMP had this function called sxset that reset the syntax. Okay, and so brilliantly, so that allowed one to do things like set the syntax for a capital U to mean union, so you could type AUB and it would correctly turn that into union of AB. Okay. This was the main problem with this was the unexpected consequences were absolutely rampant to the point where many syntax modifications you made would prevent you from quitting. because the quit symbol would be syntax modified to something else. Okay.
Right.
Syntax, invisible syntax modification is ridiculous. And, it is interesting that people, it's just not something people need or want. People can import from some other format and blah, blah, blah. But, anyway, so the idea of anything that has a side effect of saying every time you type in X sub Y, it turns into something different is hopeless in my view. It has to be all right there. Now, the question of how it's implemented, of how we go from X sub Y that was entered in the front end to this subscript Unicode is a different question. And I don't think it's obvious that we don't want something where, look, one possibility would be this. You type in X sub 77 or whatever it is, and that now is not a symbol, right? Not a symbol, nothing about it is a symbol. Now you select it somehow. Maybe the autocomplete comes up, maybe a raft comes up, I don't know. And you say, make this into a symbol. Okay. And at that point, it rewrites it as something like this, and it changes its appearance in some way. And if you were to type X and then sub again, the autocomplete system would say, oh, do you want to do this type thing? Does that make sense to people?
All of that makes sense. Yep, absolutely. And so I think we do that all within the front end, and the front end then basically spits out to the kernel things like you've written above this X slash subscript slit, 7 slash
Yeah,
plus. Yeah.
yeah. It's
Something like that.
Instead of leaning on make expression, the front end can represent internally, however it wants to with boxes. But then whenever it's asked to send those boxes to the kernel or to a package file, it would just say, well, these boxes are actually equivalent to the symbol name, X / bracket subscript bracket 7. And that's what we'll actually send over the link or serialize to the package. And then we have to kind of figure out how to kind of, go the other way when we're getting something from the kernel or reading something from the package. But this is not an unsolvable problem.
My next question, along with this, is: does it have to be very pretty? In other words, the kernel form. So can we have like X subscript and then put like, if we've got an under overscript, can we have like / base in there /script / end, or those kinds of things?
And that's what we were arguing about, is how far does this go? We don't want to basically just recreate linear form all over again in a different language. And
right.
So we've been trying to, TWJ tried to get Stephen to agree in blood that it was just subscript, and then Stephen started spitting out other ideas.
It's gonna spawn to other things, of course.
Okay, let's look at that top group there. Okay. To me, that top group seems to be the main things we want. This stuff here. All of these seem useful. And, what
by the top group, you mean just the subscripts and superscripts, or also the over and underscripts?
Those two. Subscripts, superscripts, overscripts, underscripts.
Okay.
I think that's a well-defined collection. No, you can't have a symbol which has a square in the middle of it or something, a non-letter-like square.
So one of the things I've seen sometimes is a superscripted up arrow, right, or down arrow for like spins or something else like that. A super, up arrow, a super down arrow. If that wants to be a symbol,
we should add that if we care about that. But that's not an immediate issue. If we got these, we will be at 99.5% of the way there. If we got subscript alone, we would be at 85% of the way there.
Yes, I think bar and hat, over bar and over hat are perhaps tilde are perhaps other things people might want.
Maybe star is useful. I mean, we've already you know, we've
Well,
invented this technology.
tilde we can already do today, and we might be able to do star as well. I don't remember, but
Oh.
there is a combining tilde character in
Really?
Unicode. Yes.
What is it?
It's 0303.
My God. Now, of course, if it was a multi-character thing, we'd be toast.
So that that is a grapheme cluster, but it's a grapheme cluster which today works as as part of a symbol name, because 0303 is letter like.
Right. Well, that validates some of what we're talking about here.
And there may also be a star. I just don't remember, but I can
Yeah, okay.
look
All right.
for that.
So, but let's walk through then what kinds of things we would do. So, my proposal would be, it's first of all, it's this stuff that we're talking about. That's what we would target initially. And then probably what we're dealing with is, sub / bracket over hat or something. Right? That's what an X / bracket over hat would do, the obvious thing.
By the way, 20F0 is the over star.
Amazing.
We should document this.
Yes. Okay. I mean, so, okay. So then the idea is everything would be named. These things would be everything that isn't, if you had X, I mean, we need a little bit of a syntax here. It's X over hat, 7 would turn into the hatted X followed by a 7. And so this is a postfix operator, right?
Well, I thought the point is we wouldn't consider it an operator. It's considered a letter.
Postfix letter modifier.
Yeah.
But now, just so we're clear, XXX / bracket over hat would over hat the whole thing.
Yeah.
And what happens if we build it up and go YYY, then subscript? Do we have precedences?
So I'm suggesting that even though these things are letter-like and may form valid symbols, that there will be cases where the front end just throws up its hands and says, you don't get a pretty version of this.
Right.
Or when you enter it, it's like that's a syntax error. And we can gradually expand it. Okay, but then something like this, followed by YYY, and then, this will have to do something. That's presumably X, it's presumably whatever this does. On this, and then superscript ZZZ. So yeah, that's the obvious thing. Okay, so then my proposal is that symbol of, X sub 7 or something is equivalent to symbol of X subscript 7. Okay. I also think that symbol of quotes of X, unless somebody tells me this is stupid, that this would also work. Same thing, give the same result.
I don't like that.
Why not?
Because I think people use symbol like that to test whether something's, a real symbol name.
So, wait, symbol like what?
they'll do like symbol of, string to validate that it's,
Then let's give them another function saying valid symbol name, because that's a crazy way to validate it. How do you validate it that way? If the thing, what does it do right now? What does this do right now?
it'll give you an error message.
Yeah, okay. So if people are validating by checking for an error message, they're in a
Yeah,
state
it's
of
called
sin.
check. It's a function that we've had since 1988 or maybe 1991.
Or so. Okay, but that is not people checking by whether they get an error message is just not a, I'm not going to go wild about that.
I think we use it internally in our code a bit.
Yeah, people, you write code like that all the time. It's one of the documented ways to do, robustify your
Okay,
code.
well then we need a different solution for that, because robustification that involves checking for. I mean, I think anyway. I'm not
This
passionate
isn't
about
the
this. I think it
key
should work.
thing.
However, what's that?
This isn't the core essence. I mean, we should investigate it for sure, but
Yeah.
Yes,
the
we
Spring
can
version, it's
investigate it, but
not.
This is
this
the
is
tail. What's that?
yes. This is the lowest priority piece you've mentioned thus far,
Yes.
at least from the kernel perspective.
Okay, so now let's talk about some more UX. Okay. So I would propose that when you get into this state, that there's something that allows you to say, I mean, maybe there's just a little thing. This requires some UX thought. I mean, maybe there's just a little thing that comes down underneath saying, make this a symbol. Maybe it can change the color of this thing as it, to indicate it's going to turn into a symbol or something. But in general, if I say X, star, for example, here, yeah, I mean, in order to get an over any of those special things like overdot, overbar, these are done with special key sequences, right? That are control, ampersand, and then that symbol. And it seems to me at that moment, it's easy to add some kind of autocomplete mechanism. So in other words, you're in this state, right? You're in that state, and somehow something says, when you go on, do you want to make this a symbol or something different? Does that make sense to people?
I'm not sure I know what would trigger this, and
What would trigger what?
what would trigger this this interface, and
So if that thing's been symbolized before, right? If it appears elsewhere, I can imagine
but
it bringing it up.
any
So,
subscript
yeah.
might as well offer you this. A superscript, I agree, could be a power, but any subscript should offer this, unless it's a subscript to a partial D.
So,
or an integral sign or any of these
Okay, or any of those operative
syntaxes.
things. Yes.
So just to be clear, the kind of thing that Stephen is talking about is, it's just like the completion that you get from percent. You type in percent and you get special stuff, but you can just ignore it, in which case it's just percent.
Jason,
And
that
so
is a very disappointing display for %61 there.
I think that's absolutely correct, and basically the only thing it could do.
Yeah.
Maybe the moment you
All right, okay. This is a deep corner case. I'm not going to make a fuss about it.
The moment you show the quote characters, it has to display the raw linear syntax. It's
Okay.
that.
All right. Okay. In any case, but John is pointing out this is the kind of way it would work. It's a custom
that in this case, instead of being triggered by typing percent, it would be triggered by typing the control 6 or control underscore or whatever.
Yep.
But then you can just ignore the completion and keep doing what you were doing before, and you get all of the behavior you get today.
Yep.
But if you accept the completion would wrap this in, details to be determined by the front end team. It could be a template box or whatever, but wrap it in such a way that it's now understood this thing is to be interpreted as a symbol.
Yep. And no doubt that okay, so let's talk about how we display, because that will affect, the visual indication that's given that what you're now typing is a symbol.
Yeah.
Um,
And this also is a bit similar to the percent completion, because we obviously couldn't just use a standard percent. We had to kind of buff it up a bit to make it clear it's something different.
yes. Okay, here's what I would propose. On input, in input cells, I would propose that these that these composites have some kind of dotted line border around them. But on output, there will be no indication. Right? But I also think, and probably in elegant code mode, there might be very little indication. How do I make a box how do I make a framed with a dotted line?
With frame style, arrow, dotted, I think will work.
Yeah, that should work. Is your comma outside of the subscript? That's not obvious over Zoom.
I don't know. I think it is.
Okay.
We'll find out.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out when you hit Shift Enter.
Okay. I mean, that's not terrible. It's a good start. I don't know if this is really what we want to do, but it's not obviously stupid.
I think we'd want rounded corners or something if we went this direction, but
how do you do that here? Is there a rounding radius here?
There is. Yeah. You can just pass in, rounding radius goes to 5.
Beautiful. Okay, so something like this.
Probably a style, of course, so people can overwrite it, I'd imagine. But yeah.
Yes. I'm not sure this is the surviving thing. It might be something slightly different. I mean, it might be. I'm concerned that this will look kind of stupid when you give some nice formula and you've got these weird dotted lines all over the place. This is the same mistake we've made with the whole formal X business, which I do not think is as big a success as I would like. I thought we were making those dots lighter gray.
We'd made them lighter gray.
Oh. When did we do that? 2 versions ago or something?
Maybe I don't remember. I'm told to do something and I do it and then I forget it.
Right. There used to be 2 dots, and then you decided that was too many dots, so we went down to 1 dot, and then I think it was a little later you decided, no, we still need to lighten up the dot, and so we lightened it up. I think those were 2 distinct changes, not 1 combined change.
Although a point of interest, I did discover that we'd botched this up a bit in terms of dark mode, which I just fixed. So.
Oh wow. Okay. Okay. Oh, that would have been a notable thing. Yeah. Okay. All right. I would like to put on the agenda at some point, maybe in a design meeting, also yet another iteration of what to do with formal symbols, because I'm still not liking it.
I do believe that is on our queue. It just
okay.
You are much more keen to talk about subscripted variables and
Well, I'm very excited about it. I mean, this is a great solution, I think, that we've got here. I think it's very straightforward. And, yes, I think it also one day might be at least a partial rethink of linear syntax. And I mean, there might need to be.
No. Let's not go down that road.
Unless you start forever.
Yes,
destiny.
I mean, if you want me to push back and reject everything we just talked about,
no.
Yes.
Okay, this is independent of linear syntax. Don't touch linear syntax. There is a question though. Here's what happens if you've got one of these here and you say, and that's obviously can be a string, right? You can obviously make a string out of something like this is a perfectly valid string.
Sure.
Which would display in the obvious way. And then
unclear how that would display.
I think it would
But-
display as X subscript YYY.
I'm not prepared to commit to that.
Uh,
But
And
maybe,
certainly
but
it
I'm not
shouldn't
prepared to
render as
commit
like
to
a
that.
symbol-y thing, right?
What's that?
It shouldn't have the styling that we're going to add for symbols, right? So,
No, it shouldn't, but it should have. So my question is, if I say
I
to
mean, actually,
expression,
I'm gonna go farther, and I'm not just not prepared to say it. I'm unlikely to agree that it should display in that way.
okay. So what happens
but
if I say to expression
but this
address?
absolutely should work. Yes, I mean, right? That's the
Sure.
symbol name. Therefore,
Sure,
to
absolutely, yes.
That will turn into a symbol.
Yep. Yes, that's the whole point of, having a full form that's that's looks just like a symbol. You can hit it with to expression and the product will be a symbol. Yes, and you should also be able to hit that with symbol and it will, right? You could have replaced the head to expression symbol and have the same result.
Yes. Yes. So the only thing that's controversial then is this case here, which I don't think is the most important thing at all.
Right.
There is an intermediate case, which is symbol of quotes X sub 7. Not sure about that one. I don't really care about these. I mean, this one seems important to have, but the other ones really do not.
Mm-hmm.
Just like we're going to error out with things like intervals or other things, we could just error out with that particular case you've given and just keep it a little bit more close scope, which would make it implementable.
All right, what are we not thinking of here? And then
what's the comma operator? We have a comma. We need a comma in there for like X sub 7,3 or something.
Well, we're going to need a comma, a backslash bracket comma probably.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And right. And plus is actually, I think, is that raw plus? So we could have a backslash plus for the displayed thing.
That's what I think we should do. Well, actually, we could just have this be super plus. That's the right thing. That's the consistent thing. It just turns into super plus.
What turns into super plus?
If you do X control, like this, that turns into X super plus, because super plus is the character name version of this.
Not exactly, right? I mean, I don't understand what you mean by it turning into super plus, right? I mean, this is right. Super plus is a head that formats as,
No, I know. I mean that for every one of these heads,
Into
we
the
will have a
symbolized- the
corresponding.
symbolized version of super plus.
I see. Yes. Okay. Right. Not you weren't just saying that if I type in super plus the way I've typed it for the last 20 years, it's suddenly going to turn into something else without telling me.
No.
Okay. Good. That's what it sounded like. Just
No, but I mean, but so this, for example, if I say symbol of super plus of, well, I don't know whether it's X or quotes X, that would work.
it wants to be X because if it's quote X, that's like, you put a graphics in there. I'm going to claim that that's wrong.
I agree with that claim.
Right.
But back onto the comma, I'm gonna propose comma and plus and such. I'm gonna propose we have today a thing called letter space. And when you look at it, it's like pretty obvious what it is. It's like, it's like a space, but it's considered a letter. So,
a good idea.
Letter comma, letter plus.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Although I don't think we need letter plus. Oh, we could, because it could be something like 2 plus. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yes, this is a good idea. Does symbol evaluate its arguments?
Absolutely. It's not hold anything.
Yeah, and no hold attributes.
Okay. A little funky that's a naked X, but I guess it's okay.
That's why my starting point was, this shouldn't be symbol, or why symbol using symbol for this is a little tricky because it's not hold anything.
Yeah.
So
Well,
so if you evaluated x equals 3 prior to your superplus of 3 of symbol of superplus of x, then that won't work.
yeah. Well, there might need to be some other function to help with that.
Yep.
To step out, and this might have been covered when I wasn't here. If you have something like emin for e subscript min for min energy or something else like that, are we ever thinking that would sort of say for the following, as you'd sort of say in a paper, for the following notebook, e subscript min is a symbol, and so you have some sort of declaration at the top, and then you
absolutely not. No
Okay.
declarations.
Right.
All local. Everything is local.
Right. Now, obviously, for something like this, the interface could obviously, well, I guess you wouldn't have to change that from E to variable E, but, yeah, that's an interesting question of would the interface want to change that E to variable E?
It might try, but it doesn't need to do that in
right, because it would be E subscript min, which is not in system.
Right.
Right. I don't think you would want to have it change it.
No,
But,
I don't think so.
As the user, you might want to use variable E if you're using, E on its own as well as subscripted versions.
Yeah, right. If you have E min, E max, E min, E star, for example, it's a little weird that the second two E's, it's not that weird.
Well, right, the first E would, if you're actually using E as a variable, right, that first E would have to be variable E.
Yes, I agree. All right, listen, I think we've achieved something great here. We should have figured this out 20 years ago. We could have done this 20 years ago. We could have done this in version 3. Just saying. Kind of embarrassing. How long ago was version 3?
1996.
Oh my gosh, 30 years. Well,
August. I remember it well.
It's almost as if you had to manually press the CDs to fix the install media or something, John.
Okay. This is a really good solution, guys, I think.
Okay.
All right, let's just have a quick look at this, and then I should.
I don't think that this is worth having a quick look. We're over time, and I think.
Okay, all right, and this is. I love the way that the first item is. I think this is a bad idea.
Okay, Tom is maybe a bit more positive on this than I am, although
hang on,
proposing something different.
But it was something different. I think it's a misnomer to put my name on what you think is a bad idea. So
this is really weird.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, by the way, this I'm in goes to whatever. The thing we just figured out will help with this, because you'll be able to have a table whose iterator is I'm in. And by the way,
well, you already can do that.
You already can do that. So, but
no. What do you mean? Is a subscript? Well, okay, fair enough. But I mean, I just point out, just to make one final comment here, this will just work in this scheme.
yes, it will.
Yeehaw. That's great. Why didn't we figure this out 30 years ago?
So I'm just going to give you fair warning. There's still enough hair around this implementation wise, and our 14.4 roadmap is so packed that I think it's unlikely we'll be able to make much progress on this in 14.4.
I'm pouting badly.
You'll get things that are good. Trust me.
How about Jason working on this? What's Jason?
I need Jason. Jason is critical to what I'm trying to accomplish in 14.4.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I will be the one working on this along with some of the other people when this comes in. Yeah, this will absolutely be me. So yeah.
But
And then
some
probably
aspects
Ty and others.
we could start on. I mean, even if we don't have all of the sugar in the front end, we could start on having the thing be able to render this and so on. If
Well,
we don't
So-
have
I
the
mean,
input,
we can start making progress, right? Like somebody needs to inventory what are the letters we need, what are, you know,
Yeah, right.
somebody can make,
Right,
right?
okay,
Before we
okay.
can do anything, we need to have the characters in the table, right? So,
Okay.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right. Okay. Fair enough. All right. I should run off. Okay.
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 See you
Okay.
later.
Bye.
Okay,
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.